I talked about weak definitions of sustainability where substitution is allowed, and strong definitions of sustainability where substitution is not allowed or not less allowed. But there's another thing you need to know about sustainability. And sustainability doesn't objectively exist out there in nature. It is a human construct. Sustainability is what we decided to be. There's no argument there. It is a human construct. It's a social construct. But that is not where the people who put this point forward stopped. Well, really, the point that they wanted to make was that it's really about how we define sustainability much more than what that definition in the end may be. And this can be seen as a political goal jumping the environmental agenda. Sustainability, sustainable development, after it was defined by Brundtland, became hugely popular, and all countries and all companies and all organizations said we want sustainable development. So people who were arguing in favor of direct democracy felt left out in the cold and said, well, if sustainable development is so popular, let's hijack the sustainable development agenda and put our direct democracy agenda under that, so that we can sort of take advantage of its popularity. And it didn't stop there. People who cared about distributional justice, people who cared about economic growth, realized the same thing. Their country, their company, their organization had just signed up to sustainable development, which was originally all about the environment, and they said, yeah, but our cause is important too, so let's redefine sustainable development to suit our needs and not just environmental needs. I'm not saying that equity is not important. I'm not saying that efficiency is not important. Large amounts of people live in abject poverty, so economic growth is essential. There's huge, or rich people are much richer than poor people, and a redistribution may well be in order. Those things are important, but they're not the same as environmental quality. And the reason to blur these three, as I said, is really one of opportunism and political convenience rather than analytical rigor. It didn't stop there. The United Nations a few years ago launched its Sustainable Development Goals, and here you see all 17 of them, and it includes all sorts of things. This was launched with great fanfare. This is Ed Sheeran, was there probably because he's one of the few singers who can cram all these words into a 3-minute song. And here you see the Sustainable Development Goals spelled out. The first one is end poverty in all its forms everywhere, which is a good thing, but has nothing or very little to do with the environment. And hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Great things. You sort of see the circularity here as well, right? So the goal of sustainable development is to be sustainable, apparently. This happens when you have committees write things. Ensure a healthy life, inclusive and equitable quality education, achieve gender equality, and so on and so forth, affordable energy, available sanitation. These are all worthy goals in and of themselves. The color coding here is that these are social goals. This has very little to do with the environment. Economic growth is still there, promotes sustained economic growth. This is coded in blue because it's the efficiency aspect and it's the only one so far, but it's all red. There's very little environment there, and you need to go to the next set of sustainable development goals to find green stuff. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, conserve and sustainably use the ocean, sea and marine resources, protect and restore ecosystems. So there is some environmental stuff in there, but by now, and these are the official United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and all nations in the world have signed up to these, it's mostly about social justice. It's a little bit about economic growth, and a little bit more about the environment, but the Sustainable Development Agenda is now a development agenda rather than an environment agenda. Now, why does it matter that these things are blurred? If it's just politically the correct things to do, if something is popular, then what you do is you put your cause under that banner. It is analytically not the correct thing to do, and it may be politically or from a policy perspective rather than a political perspective, it may be the wrong thing to do. And that goes back to the work of Timbergen, published in 1952, and the Timbergen Rule is that if you have n problems that you want to solve, you need n policy instruments. This was not one of Timbergen's great insights, because it essentially just follows from Lagrange's work a few centuries earlier. And one way to make this intuitive is to consider driving a car. So if you drive a car, or a car has one steering wheel, which is good because you're in full control most of the time over what direction it is going. Now imagine having two steering wheels in the car and two people pulling in different directions. That would not be safe driving, and chances are you would not end up where you want to be. You may end up in the ditch or something. Well, you can sort of, it's may work provided that you can communicate with the other person who's pulling on the other steering wheel. But now imagine you have two cars with one steering wheel. That is fine as long as you're going straight. Both cars need to go straight, but if you need to go around the bend, then two cars with one steering wheel that they have to turn at the exact same time, that makes it very, very tricky. And that is essentially the Timbergen Rule. If you want to control n things, you need to have n instruments to control them. If you have a few more instruments than problems, you're still gonna be okay, provided you can coordinate between them. But if you have fewer instruments, then you have problems, then you are in deep trouble. If you have fewer steering wheels than cars, then it's very hard to take any bend. And that is essentially what the three pillars, or the 3 pillars of sustainable development, or the 17 sustainable development goals do. They say, well, the sustainability is good, but it's all the same thing. And if you think it's all the same problem, then you might be tempted to think that you need just one policy instrument. And one example is the great many environmental problems that come out of agriculture, eutrophication and all those sort of things, greenhouse gases as well as acidifying gases, all come out of agriculture, and then also we have the antibiotics and so on and so forth. So there's a huge range of problems and environmental problems associated with agriculture. The issue is that if you want to solve these problems, and there's technical solutions for all of them, you make food more expensive. And there's two problems with that. One is you make a product more expensive, then you slow down economic growth, you switch to a less efficient system of production. So here environment and economy are immediately at odds, but food is of course also a necessary good. That means that poorer people spend a higher share of their income on foods than do richer people. So if you make food more expensive, you necessarily hit the poorest hardest. Now, if you pretend that this is all sustainability and equity and efficiency and environmental care are all the same thing, you essentially ignore these trade-offs. Whereas you should really say, well, okay, we want the clean environment, but we also want affordable food, and we want our economies to grow. And we have three problems, and therefore we need to think of a system of interventions that serves all three, rather than pretending they're all one and the same thing. Then you get completely the wrong policy advice.